Hello astrobiology staff and welcome to my presentation. My name is Joshua Salter and in this video I will briefly describe life and outline the general idea of what a habitable planet is. As part of this presentation I will draw comparisons from the only example of a life-harboring planet that we know, and Earth, and apply physical, chemical and biological concepts to illustrate the kinds of conditions that astrobiologists search for when we look to the stars for life. What is life? A life form is something that by some mechanism procures a source of energy from its environment, uses the energy to grow, develop and reproduce, then produces waste as a byproduct of the energy consumption. It also changes slowly over time in response to changes in its environment. The physiology and morphology of a life form is the result of its evolutionary roller coaster, so to speak. Changes in physiology and morphology occur over long periods of time in response to changes in life form's environment, and by the passing on of favourable genetic traits. A life form more conditioned to an environment will exceed the survivability of a less capable life form. For example, in Arctic regions the white polar bear is an apex predator. White polar bears of the Arctic were able to conceal themselves more effectively in the snow and ice, and experience greater success in hunting prey. The easily seen brown bears did not, and exist in darker wooded areas instead. A great deal of life on Earth, such as trees and plants, photosynthesize, which means that they can absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and take a source of energy from sunlight, the photons, producing breathable oxygen and sugar as byproducts. Humans both consume and produce our own energy sources in order to provide our highly complex bodies with the materials it needs to function. Then we excrete the parts we do not need. All life operates by a similar process. We are all related by a common ancestor, and genetic similarity shows in our DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid is the molecular genetic unit that contains all of the information about each individual life form on Earth. Even distant life is closely related to us. The cytosine, adenine, thymine and guanine molecular units that join to form DNA are the same between even humans and mice, which share an 85% genetic similarity to us. All life on Earth has descended from early microbial life, which itself evolved from complex chemistry. During the formation of Earth, when large bodies of water began to form, atmospheric gases fell into the oceans. These chemicals from the atmosphere built in complexity in the warmth of the ocean, forming larger molecules. These larger molecules built in size and complexity to form the proteins and nucleotides that started to develop life. At this point, the Earth was cooling and temperatures were no longer destructive to biological matter, and more sunlight was able to make it through the dense clouds that once blanketed the Earth, providing energy for photosynthesis to become possible. Because we have a very good idea of early Earth's conditions, we can find similar planets in space. If Earth was able to develop life after its early turmoil, can't other planets do the same? A habitable planet must not have a flat surface. Rocky planets allow for valleys through which water can move as liquid state, and mountains which can be stripped by erosion and wind to move and deposit materials freely throughout the world. A planet that is not flat is one that possesses tectonic activity, like Earth, which push and pull the mantle, forming volcanoes and faults in the plates. Because of the tectonic activity on Earth, we have a magnetosphere which protects Earth from the high energy particles of the solar wind. Unfortunately for Mars, it does not really have an atmosphere and is torn apart by the solar wind. If the planet is large, the force of gravity may be too strong, crushing organisms to death. If humans were made of silicon instead of carbon, we would weigh tons and be crushed to death. For silicon-based life to exist, it must exist on a very small planet with low gravity to be feasible. If the planet is too close or too distant from its host star, it will not lie within the star system's habitable zone or Goldilocks zone, meaning that it will be too hot or too cold. The type of star that the planet orbits and the eccentricity of the orbit must also be like Earth's. Earth orbits a type G main sequence star which have long enough lives to allow for evolution to take its natural course. If, for example, a planet of interest orbits a type O star, it is more than likely incinerated. If the star is too large, it may not have a long enough life to support the development of life on any of its worlds, assuming that life takes the same amount of time to form anywhere in the universe. Earth's orbit is not perfect, and if it were, we would not have the seasons. If Earth was tidally locked to the Sun, which many planets are, only one side would see sunlight. A habitable planet must contain a variety of elements within its composition to allow for complex reactions to occur. If, for example, iron did not exist, human blood could not contain hemoglobin. If there was no magnesium, chlorophyll will not be able to capture sunlight. So many variables depend on very particular processes. If a planet has one moon, the planet's oceans would react to the lunar presence, and the oceans would have tides like on Earth. A moon's orbit must be only slightly elliptical in order to not cause a collision. In the case of more than one moon, the likeliness of collision and the disturbance in tidal activity increases and threatens the possibility of the occurrence of life. In conclusion, there are a considerable amount of factors that contribute to the habitability of a planet, and the chance that it may or may not contain life. The field of astrobiology seeks to study these factors with the hope that someday soon we may no longer be alone in the universe. Thank you.